When you think of A Tale of Two Cities, it's easy to get swept up in the story, right? The secret pasts, the epic rescues, that famous ending. But for this explainer, we're gonna push the plot aside. Instead, we're gonna do a kind of autopsy on the novel. We want to get to the heart of the huge, dangerous problem that Charles Dickens was trying to figure out. Everyone knows this line. It's probably the most famous opening in literature, and it sounds like it's all about balance, about perfect opposites. But I think Dickens is actually telling us the exact opposite. This isn't a story about balance at all. It's a story about a world that's so profoundly out of balance that it's about to shatter into a million pieces. So that's our big question here. If we think of the French Revolution as just a symptom, then what was the actual disease? What's the deep societal sickness that Dickens put under his microscope? Let's start by digging into his diagnosis of the problem. Okay, so our first stop is identifying the illness. And what Dickens describes isn't just a world with a bit of inequality. No, he paints a picture of a civilization that's suffering from a deep systemic rot, a world literally broken into. Just listen to how he talks about the French aristocracy. It's not just that they're wealthy, it's that they're not even real. He calls their detachment a leprosy of unreality. I mean, what a phrase. They're living in a performance, a fancy ball that was never to leave off, totally walled off from the real world and the real suffering that was paying for their part. And now, let's flip the coin. Contrast that fancy ball with the reality for the poor. For them, reality is in a party. It's one single crushing force, and Dickens actually gives it a name: hunger. It's not just a feeling you have. It's a physical thing written on the walls, stitched into your clothes, staring at you from the empty chimneys. It is the only reality there is. And here is where you see that fracture clear as day. On one side, you have a class of people who've basically rewritten the Bible to make themselves God. On the other, you have people so desperate, they're licking wine out of the emude in the street. See, this isn't just a wealth gap. It's a complete breakdown of a shared reality. They might as well be living on two different planets. Now, here's what's so clever. Dickens makes it very clear this isn't just a French problem. He kicks off the whole book, describing England as this chaotic, paranoid place with a justice system that was both brutal and totally useless. The disease of social decay, of inhumanity. It's a pandemic. France is just the place where the fever is about to spike. Okay, so if that's the diagnosis, a society that's rotting from the top down and the bottom up, then you have to ask, what's the cure? Is it a new government? Is it revolution? Well, the book suggests the answer is something way more personal, and honestly, way more radical. You see, the beating heart of this novel isn't politics. It's the idea of resurrection. And I don't just mean that in a strictly religious way. It's presented as this powerful, animating principle for a world that is, for all intents and purposes, already dead. This phrase is the key to everything recalled to life. It's the title of the first section, and it's the secret code that gets the whole story moving. It's basically Dickens's thesis statement. In a world full of the walking dead, the emotionally dead rich, and the physically dying poor, the only real hope is to be brought back to life. And we see this theme play out in 3 stages, almost like levels, across the 3 main male characters. First, it's about the body. Dr. Manette is physically yanked out of his cell, a ghost brought back into the world. Then it's about identity. Charles Darnay is saved from the guillotine, his name and future given back to him. But the final, most powerful resurrection is all about the soul. Sidney Carton, a man who believes his life is worthless, brings his own soul back to life by giving up his body. And this isn't just some interpretation. Dickens lays it out for us right at the start. Mr. Lorry tells Lucy her job isn't just to go find her dad, it's to restore him to life. The thing that makes this resurrection happen isn't a government programmer, an army, it's a person. It's an act of pure love. Now that all sounds pretty nice and hopeful, doesn't it? Just love each other, an individual sacrifice can save the world. But I think Dickens is a lot more skeptical than that. The novel gives us this really conflicted and frankly pretty dark view of what human beings are actually made of. So we have to push a little harder here. Is this idea of personal resurrection a real answer for a sick society? Or is it just a beautiful, noble idea that gets crushed by the unstoppable storm of history? To figure that out, we have to look at what Dickens thinks people are capable of, both the good and the very, very bad. And this is the central tug of war in the entire book. On one side, you have Lucy, who he calls the golden thread. She represents our ability to connect, to heal, to literally weave people together with love. She's the force of resurrection. But on the other side, you have the mob, and Dickens describes it as a raging sea. It's this elemental force of pure destruction that just washes away all individuality, leaving nothing but hard faces where pity could make no mark. And if you want to see that raging sea up close, the grindstone scene is one of the most horrifying things Dickens ever wrote. It is the perfect picture of humanity devolving. The people aren't individuals anymore. They've become one single blood-soaked organism, sharpening weapons in this terrifying frenzy. It's the raging sea made real, yet it is the complete opposite of that golden thread. So this tension, this duality, it leads to some really common, and I think way too simple readings of the book. If we want to get to Dickens's more complicated, more cynical point, we have to look past the obvious and tackle a couple of these misreadings. The biggest one is that this is just a simple story about heroic peasants rising up against their evil mustache-twirling masters. But Dickens is way too suspicious of human nature and of power to ever write something that simple. The critical point here is that the names and the costumes change, but the tyranny stays exactly the same. The Marquis of the Old World claims the right of life and death. Well, what about the New World? Their revolutionary jury is a jury of dogs hunting down a deer. The thirst for power, for blood, is identical. Dickens is showing us that cruelty isn't a political party. It's a virus that infects anyone who gets power. The other big misreading is all about Sidney Carton. We have this image of him as the ultimate romantic hero dying for the woman he can't have. And yet, that's part of it. But if you only see it as a love story, you miss the much deeper and much more personal tragedy of his sacrifice. See, Carlton thinks he's a total failure. He knows he's brilliant, but he's just the jackal doing all the work for the loud, proud lion. He sees his own life as completely wasted, so that final act, it's less about winning Lucy's love and more about redeeming his own life from being meaningless. It's a sacrifice for himself, a way to finally make his entire wasted life matter. So if the book isn't a simple romance, and it's definitely not a cheerleader for revolution, then what is it? I think at its core, it's a timeless and deeply unsettling warning. This, right here, might be the most chilling sentence in the entire book, and it's why it's still so relevant. Dickens is saying the French Revolution wasn't some fluke of history. It was a scientific certainty. He's giving us a formula. If you take any society and crush it under the hammer of oppression, it will always twist itself into the same violent, monstrous shapes. Oppression is the seed, and violent revolution is the inevitable harvest. And then, set against that terrifying, unstoppable machine of history, you have Sidney Carton's final personal choice. This is the ultimate expression of being recalled to life in a world that is tearing itself apart. The only thing he can truly save, the only thing he has any control over, is his own soul. It's this one profound act of individual grace in the middle of a collective public nightmare. And this is where the book leaves us with this huge unresolved question. In a world being crushed by injustice and these massive historical forces, does one person's moral victory actually change anything? Is Sidney Carton's sacrifice a real answer to the sickness Dickens diagnosed? Or is it just a beautiful, tragic, and ultimately useless gesture? One last flicker of that golden thread before it's swallowed for good by the raging sea. Dickens never gives us an easy answer. And maybe that's exactly why we still have to read A Tale of Two Cities today, because the tension between redemption and revenge, between private goodness and public violence, hasn't gone away. The novel doesn't promise that sacrifice will fix the world. It only dares to suggest that without it, the world is guaranteed to tear itself apart. If this way of examining literature speaks to you, consider subscribing to the channel. Share your thoughts in the comments. Was Carton's sacrifice meaningful or merely symbolic? And let me know which book you'd like to see explained next.